So I got an interesting comment from a guy who basically asked, if I wanted no obligations, why did I get married? Now, I never actually said in my video that I didn't want any obligations. Um, I think that was kind of a misinterpretation of what I said. But I do think that his comment was pertinent and interesting enough to respond to more in depth here in a video, because I think it's possible that other people might run away with the same question and potentially conclusions from there on. Now, the thing that I was really trying to get at in that video, among other things, is firstly, this idea that if you die, or if you don't work, you die. If you don't work, you die. Like, in order to live, at least to live in a way where you're not constantly at risk of extreme weather events, other people, and potentially getting run over. I mean, just all kinds of things, really. All kinds of dangers, physical dangers that come with being homeless. If you're deeper into the woods, bear attacks, you could lose your life because of a bear attack. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you could be at risk of in that situation, right? And so, from a very young age, I had this sense about the world that, like, if I didn't do well in my schooling, and if I didn't go on to get a nice job, it was GG for me. Like, I was basically screwed. But of course, I'm here now, and I summarized where my story ended up going. But I think the kinds of obligations that I was trying to refer to don't so much amount to obligations in general, but more so obligations that I haven't chosen for myself. Like, if I describe that situation where if you don't work, you die, that's kind of a situation where you are compelled to work, forcibly compelled to work by society, because you don't have the basics in life otherwise. You don't have the basics in life unless you force yourself to work at least 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, if not, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, along with 8 hours a day for 2 days of those weeks, and then spruce in some gig work thereafter in order to make ends meet. And this is the life that a lot of people are living now. Some people have 3 jobs in addition to doing gig work, which is just insane to me. Like, they have no time for sleep because they're spending all of their time on survival. This is a terrible situation, I think. But this is the world that we have created for ourselves in North America, and I imagine many other parts of the world. So I think we're basically in a situation where work is compelled from us. We're forced to. It's like we don't get to choose to, we have to. And that's an obligation that I never chose. It was pushed on me. And I don't, just as a freedom-oriented, conscious person, I don't like the idea of something like that being thrust upon me, merely for me to ensure that I can survive, right? Like, the idea that you have to toil the majority of your life away doing things that you don't want to do just to secure not even a comfortable living for yourself, but like an uncomfortable one. I mean, a lot of the people who are living in the scenarios that I described, working 2 jobs on top of gigs, sometimes 3 jobs, a lot of those people are not living in great apartments, right? Like, they're renting kind of dodgy, kind of shady dwellings, lodgings, but that is where they're forced to be because of how far you can stretch out a dollar these days and how limited our access really is to jobs that compensate people for the work that they're doing and jobs that accommodate people in the context of this modern flailing economy. Of course, the economy itself is not flailing for the ultra rich, but for everybody else it is because of various things like bad government policy, corporate greed, and so on. But it's fundamentally a dynamic where we do not have the control, right? There is an elite of which, many of whom in that elite, many of the people that comprise it, were born into it, right? They were born into wealth. And yet they have so much more sway over our lives than arguably we do. And as someone who wants freedom for myself and for everyone else in the world, I think that's just a horrendous dynamic. To me, true freedom looks like one in which everyone is free to do whatever they want because they know that there's a basic social safety net that's always going to take care of them, no matter what happens to them in life, no matter what kind of bad luck they fall on or what stage of development they're at as a person. And that's why I talk a lot about, developing a more generous welfare state and so forth. But obviously, I don't view these obligations as innate or natural. I think these are artificial obligations that are compelled and forced upon us. And that's my problem with them. That's the problem that I've always had with them. I don't like the stress and pressure associated with that. I don't like how small those things make me feel. I refuse to accept them. I would much rather, live in a world with an entirely different economic system, organized along different lines. And that's something I'm going to continue talking about, I would hope, forever. I wouldn't want to lose my ideals, but I suppose stranger things could happen. When it comes to the obligations that we choose for ourselves, the ones that we opt into, like the ones that come with marriage, it's ideal for one to try and understand those obligations to the best of our abilities. To make an informed decision and try our best to make the decision that's right for us. I believe that I did that, and I believe that I've done that with other people that I've let into my life, and I've accepted the obligations that come with them as well. I'm not talking about intimate partners, I'm just talking about friends. I think when you make a friend, you have a responsibility to them as well to an extent, and that's part of why I haven't maintained contact with certain people, because the responsibility was too great. I knew that I couldn't be of help to those individuals. There's all kinds of obligations that we choose to opt into or choose to opt out of. I think ultimately it comes down to how informed our decisions are and what our personal preferences are. But when we're talking about artificial obligations like the ones that our contemporary capitalist society creates and wills of us, I think that's a totally different story.